Crane performers. Crane performers. Ladies and gentlemen, we want to thank you so much for joining us this morning. We would like to start, and I welcome you to this Inter-Ministerial Conference on Migration and Climate Change in the East and Horn of Africa. We want in a very, very special way to welcome Your Excellencies, the ministers of the member states present here, Your Excellencies, the ambassadors, heads of delegation of the member states, the heads of delegation, and Your Excellencies, the representatives of the invited parties to this conversation. We want to thank you all for coming to the Pearl of Africa here in Kampala, Uganda. Before I take the honor of inviting our session chair and the Honorable Minister, I want in a very special way to request our Ugandan delegation to put their hands together for our visiting delegations. Ugandans, let's put our hands together for our visiting delegations. Karibu Uganda, we welcome you. And later, I saw you so part of our entertainment. This is part of what we do for our visitors. And I'm hopeful later we'll bring you more entertainment. And we have great Ugandan coffee. I know the Ethiopians are looking at me. Yes. We have great Ugandan coffee and great Ugandan tea. And I'm also hopeful for you who has just joined us. I know some of you arrived this morning, that you can have some of our matoke, our great bananas, and the beautiful fruits that we will be serving you later today. So on behalf of the beautiful Ugandan community present, we want to welcome you, and on behalf of the Ministry of Water and Environment in Uganda, and on behalf of UN Migration, IOM, thank you so much for being part of this conversation. Today we have great entertainment from the Uganda Police Brass Band. Police, I thought when I introduce you, you will do something with the equipment. I don't know. Police Brass Band, are you there? Can you show us a sign you're there? Now there is a sign you're there. And we also have the crane performers. Crane performers. All right, there you go. Ladies and gentlemen, I now take the honor of inviting the Minister of Environment, Water and Environment in Uganda, the Honorable Sam Cheptoris, to come and chair this session. Ladies and gentlemen, a round of applause.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Honorable ministers present, Your Excellency Sameh Hassan Shokri, the Minister of Foreign Affairs, Egypt, and the incoming COP27 President, Your Excellency Antonio Vitorino, the Director General, International Organization for Migration, Your Excellency Ovid Samad, the Deputy Executive Secretary of the United Nations Convention on Climate Change, Your Excellencies, Ambassadors and High Commissioners, Honorable Members of Parliament, representatives of the youth and the children, distinguished delegates, ladies and gentlemen, I take this opportunity to welcome you all to this day of the Inter-Ministerial Conference on Migration, Environment, and Climate Change. I would like to thank you for taking time off your busy schedules to come and contribute this landmark moment in which we seek solutions to challenges that affect our common future. I also thank you very much, delegates representing national governments and experts from regional and international agencies for the tremendous work you have done in the last 2 days of the conference. I'm happy to report to you that the deliberations by the delegates and the representatives of the regional and international agencies in the last 2 days of the conference have yielded consensus on a common approach for addressing migration, environment, and climate change. Honorable Ministers, ladies and gentlemen, as a precursor of the signing of the Kampala Declaration on Migration, Environment, and Climate Change, I would like to take this opportunity to invite ministers representing various countries to make statements on the declaration, which I hope you have with you. I therefore have the honor to invite the Republic of Burundi to make our commitments. I thank you.
Excellency, Monsieur le Ministre Doro,
Minister of Water and Environment of the Republic of Uganda, Excellency, ladies and gentlemen, ministers, distinguished guests, all protocols respected. On behalf of the government of the Republic of Burundi, whose I have the honor to represent, I would like, first of all, to express my warm greetings to the country, host country of Uganda, for having received us warmly. Here we are, 12 countries of East African countries in the Horn of Africa, and IGAD countries to exchange, learn lessons and take the decisions to strengthen resilience to climate change, and also to preserve environment and the movement of our respective populations. In my country, Burundi, which assures for this year the presidency of the East African Community under the leadership of His Excellency Major General Evariste Ndayishimiye, President of the Republic of Burundi, playing an important role so that the challenges of can be overcome, so that works and good intentions should be transformed into concrete actions. We are aware that our country face contrast. Our economies are emit less gases, but they are the most negatively affected by the effects of climate change. We are convinced that solutions exist and that good experiences can help us collectively so that the challenges that we are faced with can be solved concretely. We have go towards the mechanisms of appropriate modalities and concrete to fund resilience to climate change in integrated approach, being convinced that we should do it because we have to preserve our economies. As you know, the whole world is ready to have another important meeting, COP27, in November 2022 in Egypt. The fact that the African continent receives such an event, we should not leave anyone behind. Africa is a solution factor to the world challenges linked to climate change because of their resources in water, forest, and others. Burundi is engaged, is committed to contribute to work so that event can be a success in terms of the concrete engagement and commitments which should be taken in the mobilization of funds and also investments to sustain resilience to climate change. To conclude, Burundi suggest to this assembly to put in place a technical framework at high level to prepare the champion project to present during the COP27 and also to put in place evaluation mechanisms quarterly for the progress of our declaration that we will sign soon. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Burundi. Allow me to chair from the seat here. It is now the turn of the Republic of Djibouti to make her remarks. Djibouti. They're not there.
Mr. Minister of Water Environment of the Republic of Uganda, Excellency Mr. Sam Chepturis, Mr. General Director of the Organization of Migration, Secretary General of IGAD, ladies and gentlemen, ministers, dear guests, allow me to tell you Salam Alaikum. I'm happy to be with you today to represent my country, Djibouti, and the Minister of Environment and Sustainable Development, Mr. Musahidi Abdelad, who wished to be here but who had another commitment at last minute. I'm here on the behalf of the Djibouti government and to affirm the engagement of the Republic of Djibouti for the declaration, ministerial declaration of Kampala. I would like to express my thanks for the hospitality with which we are received, thanking those who contributed to the elaboration of this ministerial declaration in your different qualities. I thank you very much.
Thank you very much. The Democratic Republic of Congo, the floor is yours.
Excellency, Mr. Minister of Water and Environment of the Republic of Uganda, on behalf of DRC, I greet and express my thanks to the President of the Republic of Uganda, His Excellency Mr. Yoweri Kaguta Museveni of Uganda, through him, all the people of Uganda, for their hospitality and the welcome with which we have been received here on the territory of Uganda. So we thank IOM for the organization of this meeting of International Inter-Ministerial Conference on the migration, my environment, and the climate change. My country, DRC, is a party state to different conventions and agreements related to climate change and to migration. Therefore, DRC constitutes with their neighbors, the origin, transit, and host countries of immigrants. Now we need accrued attention from international community. The reason why here I congratulate the efforts made by my country, DRC, through his President, Excellency, Mr. Felix Tshisekedi, and his government, which assures the right to the migrants and considers the fight against climate change as a priority. DRC, with 2 million square kilometers, in the second in the world after Amazonia, which has a lot of negative effects of migration because of climate change, with the different consequences such as destruction of ecosystems. Because of those problems, they want to achieve them, which paralyzes the planet in general. DRC, which is now at 10% of world reserves of cool waters, with can help to supply electric energy to stop the pressure that we have on our forests that we have to preserve, and to contribute to sequestrate I congratulate therefore the work which is good of our experts, which constitute the backbone of COP27. See you so that we can participate. And we have a lot of we wish to talk about climate change, migration, and you have to fight for that. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, the Republic of Congo. I now give the floor to the state of Eritrea.
Excellencies, distinguished delegates, ladies and gentlemen. At the outset, I wish to take this opportunity once again to extend my heartfelt thanks to the government and the people of the Republic of Uganda for their warm welcome and hospitality accorded to my delegation. and for hosting the high-level Inter-Ministerial Conference on Mitigation, Environment, Climate Change. Ladies and gentlemen, recognizing the issue of enhancing cooperation in relation to climate change, indecent human mobility, including migration, displacement, and planned relocation, Eritrea has been working so hard to mitigate its effects. Believing that climate change can effectively be tackled or combated only through collective, integrated actions of all parties, as declared in the tenets of the Convention, Eritrea expressed its commitment to the achievement of the ultimate objectives of the Convention and the Paris Agreement. Furthermore, Eritrea calls for effective international and regional partnership, which is of paramount importance in the international endeavor to mitigate climate change. In view of this, the Eritrea's national determined contribution presents concrete measures and steps that need to be taken in the implementation of the project and programs that include capacity building, climate change adaptation and mitigation, technology transfer, financial support, and partnership with pertinent regional and international agencies. In conclusion, my delegation would like to assure you that Eritrea's commitment to continue undertaking effective measures in mitigating the effects of climate change and environmental restoration. It's our sincere hope that this high-level ministerial conference will come up with tangible recommendation or declaration that support the global community to take concrete actions in regard to climate change, condition, human mobility, including migration, displacement, and planned relocation. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Eritrea, for your remarks. I would now like to invite the Federal Democratic Republic of Ethiopia.
Honorable ministers present here, Excellencies, distinguished delegates, ladies and gentlemen, all protocol observed. Let me start by thanking the government of Uganda, IOM, and other partners for convening this timely and important high-level conference on migration, environment, and climate change. Climate change is seriously affecting African countries in many ways, including rising temperature, rainfall variability, extreme weather events, persistent drought, prolonged dry season, overflooding, disaster, and destructions. The impact of climate change has led to further damage resulting in massive migration. Millions of people are already threatened by food, water, and pasture insecurity, which in turn is also resulting in human and livestock mobility, including forced migration. Ethiopia is among the countries that are most vulnerable to climate change. The adverse effect of climate change undermining the ability of and the efforts of my country to address the impact of climate change-induced human mobility. It is high time to support the development of an integrated approach to climate change-induced migration across the region, enhance global and regional cooperation and the collaboration to address climate change-induced human mobility, including migration, displacement, and planned relocation, explore areas of cooperation and intervention, and seek answers for the coming COP27 for serious consideration. Excellencies, honorable guests, ladies and gentlemen, cognizant of the challenges and as step to fight against climate change-induced mobility, Ethiopia has been carrying out different practical interventions to enhance the social, ecological resilience of the country. Over the years, Ethiopia has been implementing various programs with those policy framework. One among them, and by far the most consequential, has been the Green Legacy Initiative, rooted in a vision of building a green and climate resilience. Finally, I would like to assure you that Ethiopia will continue with its unwavering commitment to work with our regional and also on Kampala Ministerial Declaration on Migration, Environment, Climate Change, and also with global partners to address the impact of climate change on human migration in particular, and to achieve the long-term objective of building resilience of the African continent to the impact of climate change by 2060 in general. I thank you all.
Thank you very much, Ethiopia. It is now my honor to invite the Republic of Kenya.
Thank you very much, colleagues, excellencies, colleague ministers, distinguished participants and delegates. Let me, from the outset, register our appreciation to the government of the Republic of Uganda, our colleague, the minister responsible, and also the IOM and other partners for organizing this very timely meeting. And we have been briefed about the discussions that have been going on for the last 2 days with our technical officers. And this meeting is coming at a most opportune moment. The moment when our house is on fire. It is on fire. And inaction would lead to what Antonio Guterres rightly says, describes as collective suicide. Fires everywhere, wildfires, floods, and rising lakes and sea levels, and so on and so forth. And so there is no country that is immune from the consequences of climate crisis. The difference is that in the developed countries, their communities, their infrastructure, their economies are climate proof. They're resilient. They have the investment. They have the resources. They have the technology. So we in Africa who contribute the least in terms of global warming, 0.4 historically, and now less than 5% of the global are the ones that suffer most. 1.5, all of us know what importance of 1.5. For Africa, is 3+ degrees centigrade. We are living in Africa in a crisis. We cry, we bleed when it doesn't rain. We cry, we bleed when it rains. And yet, Africa receives the least in terms of support. Now we look at the consequences of climate crisis, but then we seem always not to look at the aspect dealing with what has brought us here today. The climate-induced human mobility and livestock and so on and so forth. It is important. It is important that human mobility, climate-induced human mobility, be mainstreamed in the entire climate action discourse. Absolutely important. And what I understand, the purpose of this meeting, and sorry if I'm taking too long, is that to ensure, in COP26, in the other COPs, and of course, now as we move to COP27, the African COP, these are discussions that are alive. You heard about the promises, the pledges offered by world leaders in COP26. Those pledges and commitments, if you look at it, are now being taken back. We have Ukraine, we have this and other. So it is important, and I agree that we need to mainstream human mobility, climate-induced, as one of the key considerations. And I appreciate the work done by the technical team, and I absolutely the draft. But my suggestion, speaking for our part, it does seem to, well-intentioned no doubt, but it seems not to come out clear to call a spade, and not to put the blame where it belongs. Climate-induced, climate is greenhouse gases. Who is responsible for this? Don't we know? We do know who is responsible. 20 countries, the G7, the G20 are responsible for more than 80% of the global greenhouse gases. These are the same countries that control over 80% of the global total GDP. They have the means. They have the technology. They have the wherewithal. And they have the responsibility under the convention, the UNFCCC, to ensure. This is a matter of not just development, it's a matter also about justice. And I don't see in the declaration an express demand that those who bear the greatest responsibility in terms of emissions and global warming take the responsibility. It doesn't mean we do nothing. I am sure Kenya has been doing a lot. Uganda has been doing a lot. All the 12 countries have been. The entire of Africa has been doing a lot beyond its capacity. It's not fair. It's not just. And I had expected that this declaration comes out clear and not try and massage and sugarcoat this. This declaration sounds too nice, too polite, too diplomatic, too business as usual. It's not business as usual. So I would suggest that we relook at the declaration. Moving forward, we need to bring the entire Africa together, not just the region. We speak with one voice. Loss and damage, adaptation finance, very, very critical. So I support this meeting and I appreciate, but I think there is something missing in this declaration. We need to address it. For Kenya to be able to endorse it, that has to be addressed. I thank you for this.
Thank you, Kenya, for your passion. May I now invite the Republic of Rwanda to take the floor.
Honorable Minister of Water and Environment, of the Republic of Uganda, honorable ministers present, excellencies, ambassadors, high commissioners, heads of international organizations. I am the High Commissioner of the Republic of Rwanda to the Republic of Uganda, and I'm standing in for our Minister of Environment, who could not make it to Kampala for unforeseen circumstances, but has delegated me. But I'm also with the Director General of the Rwanda Environment Authority and one of senior official from the Rwanda Department of Immigration and Immigration. And I extend our warm appreciation for the warm welcome extended to them since they arrived here. Honorable Minister, I would like to express also my appreciation to the government of Uganda for organizing and hosting this important conference to discuss the needed cooperation in relation to climate change-induced human mobility. I also thank IAM for the role played in organization of this conference. We hope that this regional Inter-Ministerial Conference on Migration, Environment and Climate Change becomes a new platform to foster the solidarity at all levels to act adequately and address climate change and associated impacts, including induced migrations and displacements. Rwanda, as many other countries, is highly vulnerable to seasonal variability and long-term climate change impacts. In addition, increasing vulnerability is expected to result in cumulative impacts across the country's socio-economic and environmental structures. Heavy rainfall and floods in particular are likely to have significant consequences on the environment, society, food security situation, and wider economy. Significant impacts are also expected for the country's water resources, agriculture, and health sectors. Increased temperatures, flooding, increased aridity, and soil erosion puts both urban and rural communities at risk, particularly for poor and vulnerable groups. In fact, a study assessing the economics of climate change in Rwanda estimated a conservative yearly GDP loss of 1% by the year 2030, excluding the effects of floods and other extreme weather events. This led to an understanding that climate change was not only an environmental concern, but also a threat to national development. As a result, a green growth and climate resilience strategy was adopted with the goal of Rwanda becoming a developed low carbon economy by 2050. Honorable Ministers, the science has warned us and the time to act is now. Our governments need to plan and properly manage environment-induced migration to avoid further or worse effects on the environment. Poor management of resettlement of environmental refugees may lead to further environmental degradation if not managed as they set up settlements in wetlands and carry out deforestation to be able to find shelter. Rwanda believes in multilateralism to solve complex issues such as climate-induced migration, such as climate change-induced migration. I therefore pledge Rwanda's commitment to implement the joint declaration and all the support to Egypt as they prepare to host the COP27. I thank you for your kind attention.
Thank you very much, Rwanda, for those comments. I now give the floor to the Federal Republic of Somalia.
Honorable Ministers, Excellence, Ambassadors, diplomatic missions, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, I extend my deep appreciation to the government of and people of Uganda for warm hospitality and proudly welcome. I also thank IOM and other co-organizers for excellent arrangement of the conference. This conference comes at the time when Somalia and indeed Horn of Africa region is facing serious climate emergency. We are in the midst of one of the worst drought. Is facing worst drought situation following failure of 4 consecutive seasons of rain failure. Over 7.1 million of Somalis are affected by the food insecurity, and humanitarian agencies are struggling to cope with the ever-growing demand against the diminishing support of the donor community. Against this background, one of the first actions His Excellency President Hassan Sheikh Mohamud, who is newly elected, took up an ministerial election in May this year, was to appoint myself as a special envoy for drought response, even before the formation of our cabinet. The action of the President underscores the magnitude of the challenge the country is facing and the need to capture and seek to bring international attention to dire situation, given the competing geopolitical tension and that have shifted attention away from the Somalia and entire continent of Africa. This meeting, which also seek to elevate challenges of the region and give recognition to the matter of immigration, displacement, and in the global climate change forum is very timely. With drought recurrence now every 2 or 3 years, down from 10 or 7 years, and the failure of 4 successive sessions of rain, the usual adaptation method have reached the limits, forcing an estimated 2.9 million people to be internally displaced in major towns and cities in my country. The millions of migrant and displaced persons are the more millions who are pushed into the poverty are suffering the effect of problem we have not contributed to. Somalia is among the least contributors to the emission that causes climate change. An insignificant 0.03% is said to be contribution of the Somali, yet the country is every year listed among the most vulnerable nations. Moreover, for fragile and conflict countries like Somalia, climate change is increasing the risk of conflict and displacement. Climate-induced displacement and migration is now becoming a new normal for Somalia. The million displaced or migrating into the refugee and IDP camps require support to cope with a new normal of climate change. To address migration, we have to address the inevitability, loss, and damage arising from the climate change. We need stable, reliable, and predictable funding to generate green jobs and green livelihoods. We also need investment for improved energy availability and access investment to expand food production and investment to enhance water security. Rangeland restoration programs, further production initiatives, reforestation programs, and irrigation schemes have great potential to prevent and minimize the disaster. The life-saving humanitarian report we get the life-saving humanitarian support we get to respond to the emergency situation like the one currently affecting my country is much appreciated, but it cannot be a permanent solution. We need investment and support to help overcome vulnerability and recurrence of the similar situation in coming years. We urge especially those countries with the biggest historical responsibility for climate change to contribute the most towards the victims of climate change, the climate refugees. Climate adaptation and resilience building of vulnerable communities should be seen as investment, not as a cost. But while the support of adaptation, loss and damage is crucial and urgent, we need more decisive action to reduce global greenhouse emissions. At the regional level, integration and easing for border movement for trade will cushion price volatilities. Somalia is encouraged by welcome received and the recent East African Community Summit, where the head of states and government called for the fast-tracking the process towards admission of Somalia into the community. Finally, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, the link between humanitarian development and peace nexus is an issue needs particular focus to avoid maladaptations. The billion spent every year on life-saving initiatives should not enhance dependence, but should build resilience. After the initial stabilization, migrants and poor require long-term durable solution in a peaceful environment. Hence, humanitarian intervention have to be better targeted and programmed in order to contribute to building back better for resilience communities. Somalia is committed to the multilateralism, and we therefore committed to support the outcome of this meeting and work with all partners to give better recognition to the issue of immigration, environment, and climate change. I thank you for your kind attention.
Thank you, Somalia, for those remarks. I now give the floor to the Republic of South Sudan.
Honorable ministers, heads of delegations, delegates, invited guests, ladies and gentlemen, honorable ministers from South Sudan. Our president have come with 6 ministers from the Republic of South Sudan, the Minister of Presidential Affairs, the Minister of Cabinet Affairs, the Minister of Foreign Affairs, the Minister of Interior, the Minister of Humanitarian Affairs, and myself, the Minister of Environment. I would like to take this opportunity to thank the government and the people of Uganda for hosting important conference in this beautiful city of Kampala, and for the warm hospitality accorded to our delegation. The theme of the conference, enhancing cooperation on climate-induced migration, displacement, and planned relocation, is timely because South Sudan is currently reeling from the impacts of climate change. The climate crisis is worsening in our country. 6 out of 10 states are currently flooded since 2019. And over 1 million people have been displaced and have lost their livelihoods and are currently living under dire conditions. Droughts, excessive heat, heat waves, haphazard rain patterns are resulting to crop failure and resulting to food insecurity. South Sudan acceded to the United States to the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change, NFCCC, in 2014, and participated in the negotiations at COP21 that resulted in the Paris Agreement. Though with negligible emissions, South Sudan suffer the most from the adverse impacts of climate change. Furthermore, South Sudan signed and ratified the Paris Agreement. South Sudan would like to affirm and commit to implement the Kampala Ministerial Declaration on Migration, Environment, and Climate Change, and will collaborate with the East African community.
Yeah, we don't need to mention them. We don't need to talk much about them. It has to do with drought, it has to do with famine, it has to do with the lack of rain, and the consequences of this is the people immigrate from their places to other places, and this creates a lot of social instability, sometimes wars, and so the diagnosis of the problem is there. So what do we need? We need to work together. We need to create mechanisms for both of our all our countries, so that we coordinate our work, our plans, and whatever thing we need to put in place, so that our efforts complement each other, and then we look into finding international and regional partners to help us in whatever we fail to achieve. But it is known that our economic situation in these countries, we cannot do a lot about it. We can do little about climate change. This is a very big issue. Most of the tools to fight or to combat climate change is not with us. So we need external help. Given the meager resources and the very bad economy, I think we need the international community to step in to help us either collectively or individually. On this regard, I had a look at the communique which we are going to sign later. My initial observation about this declaration is that it is heavily stuffed with commitments to our countries. Given the situation I talked about, the economic situation, the meager resources we have, I think most of us are going to sign it. But later on, when it comes to evaluation, what did we achieve, what did we implement, what we didn't, I think we won't find good results. Sudan is, given the huge area of Sudan, we have millions of refugees from our neighbors all over. We have our neighbors, we have our refugees on other countries also, but we have millions of refugees inside the country. I give you just one example for the effect of this big number of refugees in the country. In Eastern Sudan, last year, I have a statistics here that 350 million plus trees were cut to build houses, to get fire. So this is very devastating. Whatever we do, we are not going to compensate this loss, and this is repeated every year. Every year, you see, this is going to affect greatly the climate change in the country. At the same time, we need also to do something about the human trafficking. Those millions of refugees, they are not in our country to stay. They use Sudan as a springboard for other destinations. Until they achieve that, they stay and they make a lot of damage into the environment. This is just my brief observations. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Sudan, for your comments. May I now invite the United Republic of Tanzania to take to the floor.
Thank you, Chairperson, Honorable Ministers, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen. On behalf of the government of United Republic of Tanzania, and indeed on my own behalf, I wish to extend my sincere gratitude to the government of Uganda and the International Organization for Migration for hosting this important high-level meeting on migration, environment, and climate change. Also allow me to express my delegation appreciation for the hospitality extended to us and for the excellent facilities that have been put at our disposal. Excellencies, Tanzania faced with the several challenges related to the climate change that threaten the livelihood of its citizens and socio-economic development at large.
Excuse me, Minister. Excuse me. We are going to receive the President of the Republic of Uganda. The Minister can continue, but after that, we wait until we have received the head of state. Thank you very much.
So can I continue? Adverse impact of climate change are now reaching an event in almost of economic sectors. Excellencies, the convening of this meeting could not have been more timely. It has been an important platform to reflect on the devastating effect of climate change in our region. The meeting has also offered us the opportunity to learn from one another on how to address climate change challenges and hear from other important stakeholders, particularly the youth and development partners, in the spirit of international cooperation. Excellencies, in Tanzania, the pattern of migration and displacement have been primarily internal and attributed to environment change, conflict, and development. The overall trend has been increasing in recent years due to multiple independent and interrelated factors, including insufficient pasture, poor farmland, drilling, natural resource, and rise of conflicts. Excellencies, the overall policy and development framework in Tanzania constitute potential and relevant policy tools related to the environment, climate change, and migration in the area of development, urbanization, environment, climate change, and land use and planning. Climate change is well incorporated in national development framework, such as the third National 5 Years Development Plan 2021-22, 2025-26, to ensure development, investment, and climate compatible development. Excellencies and colleagues, as I conclude my remarks, climate change, including migration, threaten the very survival of a substantial portion of our population. Let us translate these challenges into action so that the outcome of this meeting contributes to securing the future we want for our planet's Earth. The future generation will judge us by whatever decision we take today. Therefore, let us act responsibility. Thank you very much. Merci beaucoup. Asanteni sana. Shukran lakum.
Ladies and gentlemen, with your indulgence, allow me hold that the speech by Uganda, which was meant to be next, will come after our other invited members who are here. And we now take the pleasure of inviting the People's Democratic Republic of Algeria as the guests of the Inter-Ministerial Conference. You're welcome.
Salam alaikum. Bonjour.
Good morning.
Algeria to Uganda. Honorable Minister of Water and Environment, Excellencies, Ministers, Excellencies, Ambassadors, representative of the IOM, distinguished participants. Allow me first, Honorable Minister, no, he is away for now, but I have to say these words, to extend to you the thanks of our Minister of Environment, Mrs. Mwelfi Samia, for inviting her as a guest to this conference, and her apologies for not being to attend because of previous commitment. I take also this opportunity to thank the government of the Republic of Uganda for initiating and hosting this timely conference, Inter-Ministerial conference, and congratulate, by the way, all the stakeholders and organizers of this meeting for organizing and for the outcome of our proceedings. As a guest to this conference and as a country confronted with migration and climate change, Algeria would like to confirm and support the commitments made during this conference and wish they will be taken on board during the next COP27 due in Sharm el-Sheikh in November. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Your Excellency. I now take the pleasure of inviting the Republic of Senegal, who hold the presidency of the African Union. You're most welcome.
Bonjour. Good morning. Good morning. Bonjour. Mr. Minister of Water and Environment of Uganda, Minister Honorable Guest Borha. I thank the government, the Ministry of Environment of Uganda for having invited to this event, and also to have helped us to attend this important meeting in which I participated myself. Now, for these past 3 days, last 2 days, I participated in technical debates at high level regarding climate change and migration, and now, because I've been in the negotiations until 2019, and I can see now that people now start to integrate systematically in discussions, in programs, in planning the effects of climate change. And now, today, the recommendations which will be taken after this conference, we will work so that they can be approved by the members of the delegations at COP27 in Egypt, and that the African group will work to defend its position, and also that at a high-level segment we can engage our heads of state to take those recommendations into account and to discuss them during COP27. Now, that moment, at that level, we will be able to be assured that the notion of displacement, climate displacement, climate migration and refugees should be understood, integrated in the discussions on climate change. I think that the results and the recommendation which will be taken will be presented, and that we can make them our shelter and our weapons during COP27 in Egypt. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Senegal. I now take the pleasure of inviting the Republic of Zambia, Chair of the African Group of Negotiators. You're most welcome, Zambia.
A very good morning to you all protocols observed. May I take advantage of this opportunity to be grateful to the President of the Republic of Uganda, President Yoweri Kaguta Museveni, for having allowed us, giving us an opportunity to have this conference take place in harmony. As you may all be aware, our coming here has been to see how we can come out with strategies and agree on the way forward to mitigate on the issues of climate change that has affected almost all our African countries. We are grateful that we were invited from Zambia to take part in this, so that we could see what our sister grouping of states are doing in this area, and also compare on what we have also put in place in terms of policies and strategies to mitigate climate change issues. A lot of things have been mentioned here, and it has eased my work. I can only say that we are part to the commitment as a party, as who have come from a different region. We are saying that we are committed to supporting what has been agreed in this conference we have had. And it's good that whatever has been agreed, some of the things that we have also done and put in place on the other side of the region. In closing, I must thank every one of you who took part in the technical committee as we present the results to our head of state for signing. I thank you all for your attention. Thank you.
All right, so ladies and gentlemen, very shortly, His Excellency the President will be joining us. And as we wait, may I now request the crane performers to welcome our guests.
Die to starvation. Can you imagine starving to death? How painful that can be. To the many people in Somalia, in Sudan, I can't even mention all of them. It's just too much for me to mention, and it's making me feel emotional as I'm talking about it. It's unacceptable for our people to be starving to death at this moment because of famine, because of the droughts that are caused by the wealthy nations, because they continue emitting greenhouse gases in the atmosphere. And this disrupts our whole system, our food security, our lives, our culture, and we need to hold them accountable. But at the same time, we need to do that by uniting together as this region. The polluters are uniting together to continue oppressing Africa. We also need to unify our voices into one voice and put aside all our differences if we are to protect our people, to protect the women, to protect the disabled who are not in this room at this moment. Migration, as a result of climate change and displacements, I think we all know that these are happening in our countries. We don't even need science. We just need the data to confirm how many people are at risk, how many are being affected, and what are the solutions to reduce that. And when we talk about climate change wouldn't have been a problem if we didn't have the underlying issues of poverty, of gender inequality. So if we don't address those issues, then we are not addressing anything. I was talking to a friend last week, and they were asking if there's any way I could help because they have a friend walking from Karamoja to Kampala because of the ongoing droughts right now and famine. The young children in Kampala streets, most of them are from Karamoja sub-region. And why? Because of the droughts there. But it's not only droughts, but it's the poverty levels, the inequalities that are in that region. I know our government is trying its best, and I would like to urge our policymakers and the policymakers in this country, but I know this is not only for Uganda, but it's all over our region, in East Africa community and the Horn of Africa. These are cross-cutting issues. So I urge you to address the root causes of vulnerability, but also unify to one voice. The beauty of Mountain Rwenzori, the glaciers are receding, are melting at a very fast rate. Mountain Kilimanjaro, melting at the fastest rate. And of course, this is causing the riverbanks to burst and displacing very many people, and mostly the poor people, because the rich people won't settle in those flood-prone areas. So you see, climate change is not only just a climate issue, but it's inequalities. So the youth have sent me to tell you that you need to establish and implement a youth strategy for transformative youth inclusion, not forgetting women and children throughout all decision-making processes and negotiations and implementations of policies, but also focus on building community resilience and capacity, mostly on proactive measures to reduce risks and disasters. Also establish a youth climate fund. We emphasize this because we're happy to see that in the declaration, there's a mention of that. So we're really grateful to see some of our points being taken in the declaration. And we hope this is a step for further collaboration with us. Thanks to South Sudan and Somalia for committing yesterday that they'll continue engaging youth from today, and we'll be following up to see if you're really engaging the youth in your region. And for other countries here, we're also going to be knocking on your door. We're also committed, we're not just demanding and asking, we're also committed to continue building capacity and facilitating knowledge exchange on climate change migration nexus, but also building community resilience at grassroots and at all levels. For example, we have the Younger Migration and Climate Change Working Group, and we hope to organize events during the Conference of Youth 17 and COP27 and beyond. We'll continue holding you accountable, we promise you this. We will continue holding you accountable and demanding you to deliver the commitments that you've made in that declaration. Unfortunately, you've not put the time when you'll be delivering those commitments, and we'll continue asking you to tell us when you'll be delivering them. And we are also committed to continue speaking for the most marginalized. So in conclusion, speaking on behalf of the youth in our region, we are looking forward to working with you, all decision makers. We're looking forward to forming sustainable solutions, peace building, and also proactive action on climate mobility in COP27 and beyond. Thank you so much. If anyone wants this copy, I'll share it with you.
Thank you very much, the representative of the youth. It is now my honor and a privilege to invite MS Oguchi Daniels, the Deputy Director General of the International Organization for Migration. Thank you.
His Excellency President Museveni, His Excellency President Salva Kiir, honorable ministers, distinguished ambassadors, youth representatives present and those with us in spirit, ladies and gentlemen. It's a great honor for me and a privilege to be able to deliver this address in the name of IOM. Please allow me to first express warmest congratulations and highest regards from IOM Director General Antonio Vitorino to the government of Uganda for having convened this meeting in a key moment for us all, when the adverse effects of climate change and environmental degradation is putting pressure on the resilience of our continent. Further, IOM commends the government in Uganda and each of the countries of the region, as well as IGAD and EAC, for their vision and wisdom in deciding to address the devastating drought, repeated floods and landslides resulting in loss of lives and livelihoods in a dedicated, action-oriented, high-level event and committing to a historical declaration on migration, environment, and climate change. The declaration that you, the member states of the Eastern Horn of Africa, have drafted is a testimony to your leadership to advance regional cooperation and articulate a call to avert, minimize, and address displacement due to climate change and disasters. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, this declaration is more than that. It's a clarion call to strengthen support to your people and to the most vulnerable to climate change impact, including your youth. But today's signing is not the end of the day. It is a major milestone in a longer journey. And in the name of IOM, I hope that this important regional call for action gives birth to a continental roadmap, and why not to a global world commitment ahead of the next COP in Sharm el-Sheikh in Egypt, but as well stays as a morally binding reference to the next COP28 and beyond. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, allow me a last word. As an observer to the Conference of Parties and in accordance with its mandate, including as the coordinator and secretariat of the UN Network on Migration, IOM is fully, I repeat, fully committed to echo your declaration and to support you in this endeavor, including through other member states. I thank you all.
Thank you very much, IM, for your comments. I would like now to take the opportunity to welcome, to invite Honorable Dr. Wakne Kabeyu, Executive Secretary of the Inter-Governmental Authority on Development.
Thank you very much, Your Excellency, Yoweri Kaguta Museveni, our gracious host and the President of the Republic of Uganda, Your Excellency Salva Kiir Mayardit, President of the Republic of South Sudan, Your Excellency Ministers of IGAD and East African Community member states, and I recognize the presence of Acting Minister of Sudan, who is our chair, representatives from multilateral, regional and international institutions, ladies and gentlemen. On behalf of IGAD, I am honored to join you at this, the 4th Regional Inter-Ministerial Conference on Migration, Environment and Climate Change. Let me begin my remarks by thanking the government and the people of Uganda for hosting this very important meeting and for the characteristically warm hospitality of the people of Uganda that we have been privileged to receive since we arrived. Excellencies, climate-related disasters and environmental degradation is one of the leading causes of forced displacement around the world. Increasingly, displacement attributed to natural disasters has been growing in a scale, frequently, and complexity, and continues to pose huge challenges, particularly for exposed and vulnerable populations in fragile ecological environments. For instance, the IGAD region has one of the highest concentrations of displaced population in the world. Current estimates indicate that the IGAD region has close to 14 million displaced people, comprising of more than 9 million internally displaced peoples and 4 million refugees. Among them, which the Republic of Uganda hosts millions of refugees from the region, and they are living considering Uganda from home away home. And we are very thankful for the Republic of Uganda for this. To compound these challenges, Your Excellency, we are in the midst of worst drought in 14 years, with over 50 million or 1 out of every 5 of our citizens of the region is facing the insecurity of not knowing where the insecurity of food and not knowing where the next meal will come from. Nevertheless, while the level of climate-induced displacement are substantial within our region, it must be also noted that conflict and human-induced disasters are significant contributors to displacement and involuntary migration of the people and livestock in our region. I underscore the fact that it has become increasingly difficult to differentiate between the human-induced and naturally occurring disasters as immediate cause of displacement. IGAD has been vigorously highlighting the nexus between conflict, climate change, and displacement, both directly and through our member states representing in various international platforms, including in the UN Security Council. Certainly, the climate, the immediate impact of COVID and other conflicts in Ukraine compounds the long-term effects of climate change situation. It is therefore imperative that we must simultaneously have one eye on recovering from the global pandemic and resolving conflict, and at the same time keep the other eye from fixed on our efforts to cause an impact of the climate change. In this spirit that, Your Excellencies, this fourth regional inter-ministerial conference on migration, environment, and climate change has been convened by the Republic of Uganda in collaboration with IOM to enhance regional operation in addressing the vulnerability of our people to climate-induced displacement. For the technical consultations over the past 2 days, member states and partners identified several key issues and proposed recommendations that seek to remedy that identified challenges. In this regard, IGAD is privileged to have contributed to the draft outcome document that will be presented this morning for consideration and signature. Our submission draws upon our experience and interventions in building climate resilience for states and societies in the region. Consequently, Your Excellency, there is a pressing need for us to keep working together in the spirit of multilateralism toward inter-regional policy coherence in order to mainstream climate-induced displacement within our region nationally and policy frameworks. Your Excellency, addressing data and knowledge gaps in climate-induced displacement by investing in regional capacity for prediction and early warning, as well as understanding and applying indigenous knowledge and practices for locally applicable climate adaptation response for community is a very important intervention, we believe, as IGAD, and strengthening cooperation at all levels of government and communities to implement treaties, pacts, protocols, and regulations on free movement of people, labor mobility, and transhuman. All of these proposals in line with the joint program that IGAD is implementing together with our partners, IOM, ILO, and Platform on Disaster Displacement and UNHCR. Thanks to Uganda and leadership of Excellency President Museveni, this declaration creates the opportunity to enhance regional action and solutions. It provides us with the means to better anticipate and prevent forced displacement in the converse support vulnerability and voluntary migration from areas affected by disasters and climate change. Thank you very much, Your Excellency.
Thank you, Executive Secretary, for those your remarks. It is now my privilege to invite His Excellency Ovais Samad, the Deputy Executive Secretary of UNFCCC. You are welcome.
Thank you very much. Your Excellency, President Museveni, President of Republic of Uganda, His Excellency, President of South Sudan, Mr. Salva Kiir, Honorable Ministers, distinguished delegates, ambassadors, my colleagues from the United Nations, Deputy Director General Danielle, UN Resident Coordinator, and all present here, all protocols observed. And I'd like to start with, first of all, thanking the government of Uganda, and especially the Ministry of Environment, both the Minister of Environment, the State Minister of Environment, for hosting us, for bringing us together in this extremely important event. I represent the United Nations Convention for Climate Change, Paris Agreement, and the COPs that we organize every year. So it's an extremely important opportunity, and it's a great pleasure and honor for me to be here to listen to all the statements that have been made and the passion and the meaningful voices that I've heard today. This conference takes place at a very key moment. Incidentally, it's now 100 days from today to COP27 that'll happen in Sharm el-Sheikh in Egypt. This conference highlights, and the declaration that you will all sign today, the synergies between, as has already been mentioned, between migration and climate agendas to seek solutions for human mobility, displacement, and migration that is caused by the impacts of climate change. Let me provide a brief global context in which we are meeting today and the climate change discourse is happening. The deadly impacts of climate change are widespread and growing. From the recent heat scorching the Northern Hemisphere, severe drought in the Sahel, flooding in South Africa, to more intense storms and sea level rise. Elsewhere, the climate crisis is bad and it is getting worse, just as scientists have predicted. Every fraction of a degree of temperature rise is a matter of life and death for many, as we just heard, especially the most vulnerable people in the developing world. For them, climate change is not a threat, it is a catastrophe, yet no nation is immune. The science is absolutely clear about what humanity must do to get off this deadly path, limit global temperatures rises to 1.5 degrees Celsius by the end of the century. That means cutting greenhouse gas emissions we are pumping into the atmosphere by nearly half by end of 2030. That is only 8 years from now. Our goals are very clear, but we are far from meeting those goals, as we've already heard. While nations have made some progress, instead of nearly halving our emissions, we are on track to increase them by a massive 14% by the end of 2030. This math does not add up, and it adds up to disaster. That's why doubling down on fossil fuels is deeply troubling and nonsensical, regardless of the current geopolitical challenges. It threatens humanity's long-term existence on this planet. We cannot fight fire with fire. We need to move in exactly the opposite direction. That means kicking our global fossil fuel addiction and talking about the issues we have been putting off for too long. The massive transformation we need to make throughout the world, the way we produce, the way we consume, the way we live, and more, to turn things around. That's why collaboration is so important, and that's why we are here. Transformational changes can only happen if everyone is on board, north, south, east, west, rich, poor, and everyone. And especially also not only governments, but in businesses, investors, non-governmental organizations, and everyday people, and especially the youth. And I was very heartened to hear the youth representative today. COP27 is a space where the collaboration can happen, the moment where global leaders can regain momentum on climate change. This is an incredibly difficult challenge, and it won't be easy, but it is critical. Now is not the time to retreat on promises that were made in Paris for the Paris Agreement, recently in the Glasgow Climate Pact. The new transparency framework that is in place ensures countries must live up to their promises, all countries. Now is the time for bold action, tough decisions, accountability. Now is the time for political leadership. The recent reports of the IPCC are very clear. Africa is already seeing record numbers of displacement as climate change intersects with other challenges, from land degradation, biodiversity loss, to food insecurity, resulting in social, economic, and political instability. The Paris Agreement responds to all of these threats. It includes global goal and adaptation to strengthen resilience and reduce vulnerability to climate change, including by identifying the collective needs and solutions for climate impacts that are already happening now. In a nutshell, what we need to focus on is preparation to adapt, prevention through mitigation measures, and protection through financial and other assistance that need to be provided by all stakeholders. And this will be key to resilience and sustainable action that take people-centered approach. We have several opportunities going forward, starting now at this conference and in the coming weeks and months, to engage and step up all efforts to find solutions, highlight the urgency of addressing climate change, and enhance political momentum in the lead up to COP27. And there are a few events, I'll just highlight, there's several others. There will be a regional climate week in Libreville in Gabon, the pre-COP in Democratic Republic of Congo, the UN General Assembly, of course, and COP. From our perspective, there are 5 priorities for us to reflect on. COP27 must be a moment to accept the urgency of our collective challenge and agree to enhance collaboration and cooperation in line with the scale of the challenge. COP27 will be the implementation COP, the first COP where nations must show that they will put Paris Agreement to work in their countries through the nationally determined contributions. COP27 will be about engaging all segments of the society, including non-governmental organizations, businesses, and especially the youth. I repeat, youth, extremely important. And I'm very pleased the Youngo have given a very strong voice and momentum to the urgency. And that all is under the banner of inclusive multilateralism. Given its geographical location, COP27 will have a special focus on adaptation and on the need to ramp up climate finance for the most vulnerable. And finally, COP27 will need to scale up financing. This is not only about 100 billion pledge that was made, but it's still not been fulfilled. We now need to work on shifting the trillions of public and private sector finance towards a low-carbon, resilient economies. I very much look forward to the declaration that is being signed today at the conference. I strongly believe that it can be a forceful message from here that should resonate beyond this region and gather support for recognition that the impact of climate change on human mobility is here and now, and it needs to be addressed. I thank you all very much.
Excellency, it is now my pleasure and honor to invite the Egyptian ambassador to Uganda to deliver his message, to deliver the message of His Excellencies Sameh Hassan Chowdhury, the incoming COP27 President. Mr. Ambassador.
Your Excellency, President Yoweri Kaguta Museveni, Your Excellency, President Salva Kiir, Honorable Ministers, Excellencies, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. I stand here before you today on behalf of the Egyptian presidency of COP27. I want at the outset to thank the Ugandan government and the International Organization for Migration for organizing this important and pertinent event. The nexus between migration and climate change, in my opinion, is one that is incredibly important, but hasn't so far been addressed in a holistic and a comprehensive way. We also in Egypt look forward to the outcome of this discussion and the important contribution that Uganda, IOM, countries of IGAD and the East African community have made to advancing this conversation on the regional level. And we sure hope that we can take it from here to advance it on the continental and the global level during COP27. Excellencies, I don't think I am exaggerating if I said that the 27th session of the Conference of the Parties to the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change comes at a very challenging time, at a very critical time. A time of cascading risks, challenges and threats to development, peace and security, some of which are related to climate change and the extreme weather events that are impacting the lives and livelihoods of millions of people around the world. Some others have to do with the global pandemic, with a war in Europe that has the impact of a global financial crisis as well as a food security crisis. In the face of these risks, challenges, and threats, it is actually not time for despair. It's actually time for hope, for coming together, for reviving multilateralism as we move forward. It is time for action, and that is the way I think it is safe to say that Egypt approaches the honor and the responsibility of hosting the next COP, Africa's COP. Our focus is to move from pledges to implementation, as was just mentioned. Our focus is not to lower, but to actually raise the expectations on issues of adaptation, mitigation, and since I am speaking from Uganda and on behalf of Africa, and yes, indeed, financing. This is an important issue that needs to be addressed. I want to assure you, Your Excellency, President Museveni and President Kiir, that we will do everything in our effort in order to, on one hand, make COP27 Africa's COP, and on the other hand, to raise the ambition rather than lowering it. Thank you very much. I really appreciate it.
Thank you very much, Mr. Ambassador. Your Excellency, Honorable Keriako Tobiko, the Minister for Environment and Forestry of Kenya, was delegated by His Excellency Uhuru Kenyatta to represent him at this function. I would like him to invite him now to deliver the President's message. Thank you.
Your Excellency Yoweri Kaguta Museveni, the President of the Republic of Uganda. Your Excellency Salva Kiir, the President of the Republic of South Sudan, Excellencies, distinguished colleagues. Your Excellencies, first of all, let me convey the warmest greetings from my president, your friend, Uhuru Kenyatta, who would very much have wished to be here with you on this important occasion, but could not because of circumstances beyond his control. He has asked me to deliver, Your Excellency, his remark both as president, but also as the chair of CAHOST. And it's my duty now, humble duty, to read his remarks. This year marks the 30th anniversary of the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change, UNFCCC. In our commitment through the convention to stabilize greenhouse gases concentration in the atmosphere in a time frame that would allow ecosystems to adapt naturally, ensure that food production is not threatened, and enable economic development to proceed in a sustainable manner. Despite the over 30 years of well-grounded scientific evidence and bold political commitments made at every global conference on climate change since 1995, global emissions have continued to rise. The sixth assessment report of the IPCC, released in April of this year, confirms that we are in a state of global climate emergency. The planet is warming up faster than anticipated, and 1.5 degrees centigrade will be reached before 2040 instead of the end of the century, 2100. This report further warns that climate hazards will increase in frequency and intensity. Further, the war in Ukraine is now being used as an excuse to backtrack on the commitments made by some of our developed countries, partners, to stop the use of coal. This lack of commitment by our developed country partners, including the G20 countries, to urgently reduce emissions and provide adequate climate finance to developing countries for climate action, is putting Africa in a crisis. Millions of our people are caught up in multiple intersecting crises. This includes geopolitical tensions and conflict in South Sudan, Ethiopia, and DRC, land degradation, COVID-19 pandemic, and the climate-induced drought emergencies in the Horn of Africa. These multiple crises hit hardest where people are already living in vulnerable conditions, ill-equipped to withstand and to recover from consecutive disasters and conflicts. Excellencies, Africa is known for its long history of migration, both voluntary and forced. In many parts of the continent, communities are spread across 2 or 3 nations. Cross-border migration in Africa represents an important livelihood and coping strategy. It is often used as a route to flee from conflict, seeking pasture, or seek better socioeconomic opportunities. We all experience cross-border migration in different magnitudes within the East African Community region. To address these concerns on migration and climate change, the African Union Commission has developed a number of policy instruments that all of us know about. Firstly, the African Union Agenda 2063, which commits to building climate resilient economies and communities. The recently launched Africa Climate Change Resilient Development Strategy and Action Plan for 2022-2032, whose aim is to enhance cohesion in the continent's approach to addressing climate change and the implementation of the Blue Economy Strategy. The legally binding African Union Convention for the Protection and Assistance of Internally Displaced Persons in Africa, known as the Kampala Convention. The Africa Climate Mobility Initiative, ACMR, whose comprehensive report on the climate-forced mobility in the continent and agenda for action, which will be launched on the margins of COP27. And the IGAD Free Movement Protocol to protect people from moving due to the impacts of climate change. The African Union also established the Committee of African Heads of State and Government on Climate Change to ensure that Africa speaks with one voice in all climate and multilateral fora. Excellencies, as you are all aware, I was appointed to be the chair of the Committee of CAHOST on 2nd February 2022. Following this appointment, I held a CAHOST meeting on the 27th of June 2022 on the margins of the recently held UN Conference on Oceans. This meeting adopted one, the African Commission position, the African Common Position, and the key messages to COP27 as presented by Zambia as the chair of the AGN. Two, Africa's priority for COP27 as an implementation COP as presented by Egypt as the incoming COP27 presidency. And lastly, Africa's common position on oceans as presented by the Africa Union Commission. The CAHOST meeting also launched the first African Climate Change Resilience Development Strategy and Action Plan 2022-2032, and the African High-Level Commission on Seas and Oceans to improve coordination and consolidate decision-making on ocean, seas, and blue economy around the continent. As agreed during CAHOST meeting, Africa priority for COP27 will focus on adaptation as a key priority for the continent, closing the existing climate finance gaps, especially on adaptation, financing loss and damage to the impacts of climate change, pushing for an ambitious mitigation plan for keeping 1.5 degrees alive, and recognizing, this is important, the special needs and circumstances of Africa. Further, to continue with the momentum to COP27, as a number of events and meetings have been lined up to mobilize, support, and consolidate our position in regional meetings similar to this meeting. Some of these events include Africa Climate Week, the Africa Climate Week in Gabon, AMSEN meeting in Senegal, pre-COP27 in DRC, climate meetings on the margins of the UN General Assembly, Africa Day at COP27, just to mention but a few. We once again express our fullest support to the Arab Republic of Egypt and to the designate COP27 President Egyptian Foreign Minister, His Excellency Samir Chakri. Excellencies, at the East African community level, a number of climate change and environment-related policy instruments have been formulated, with regular ministerial meetings convened to monitor progress on implementation. Despite these efforts, the region is still experiencing devastating climate change impacts, which know no political boundaries. These impacts and conflicts in the region have led to migration and internal displacement of our population without adequate resources to respond or monitor the movement. The World Bank report on internal climate migration in the Lake Victoria Basin countries released in 2021 projects that there will be 16.6 million to 38.5 million internal climate migrants in the Lake Victoria Basin countries by 2050, and that this could be reduced by 30% with concrete climate and development action. In the region, Kenya is a major recipient of conflict and climate change migrants, putting additional pressure on our limited resources, while we also have to deal with climate change impacts and other economic challenges. Excellencies, to respond to these impacts, my administration has put in place several disaster risk reduction mechanisms, environment and climate change legal instrument, institutional framework reforms, and safety nets, including cash transfers. Further, my administration committed to reducing emission by 32% against business as usual scenario by 2030. Despite these efforts, climate change continues to challenge our adaptive capacities and overwhelming, most particularly the youth, elderly, women, children, who are vulnerable and have contributed least to this problem. To survive climate change impacts and reduce climate-induced migration and displacement, Africa needs long-term investment in resilience building, early warning systems, and climate-resilient infrastructure. It is for this reason that I urge our developed country partners and big emitters to urgently reduce emission to keep 1.5 alive, meet their climate finance obligation in a transparent and timely manner, finance loss and damage, increase funding for adaptation, and recognize the special needs and circumstances of Africa. Finally, I want to take this opportunity to thank the government of Uganda for hosting us and the organizers of this meeting, and hope very much that we will integrate the outcomes of this meeting into the discussions during the upcoming COP27 in November of this year. I thank you for listening. Thank you so very much.
Thank you, Honorable Minister, for delivering the President's remarks. Your Excellencies, I would now like to invite Honorable Okello Oryem, Minister of State for Foreign Affairs, who is representing the Minister for Foreign Affairs, to read the joint declaration on migration, environment, and climate change. Honorable Oryem.
Your Excellency, Yoweri Kaguta Museveni, President of the Republic of Uganda, Your Excellency Salva Kiir Mayardit, President of the Republic of South Sudan, colleagues, ministers, honorable ministers in their different distinguished capacities, Excellencies, ambassadors, and high commissioners, representatives of IOM, Executive Director, dear brother of IGAD, distinguished ladies and gentlemen in different capacities. I am Okello Oryem, the Minister of State for Foreign Affairs of Uganda, in charge of international relations. This morning, I have the distinct honor of reading the Kampala Ministerial Declaration. But let me also take this opportunity once more, welcome you all to Uganda for this very important meeting. We're grateful for this numerous attendance and us having a full house here. At the offset, Your Excellency, permit me to express my highest respect to both of you, and also please accept my warmest compliments. Your Excellencies, the Kampala Ministerial Declaration on Migration, Environment, and Climate Change by ministers, by member states of the Intergovernmental Authority on the Environment, IGAD, the East African Community, EAC, and states of the East African Horn of Africa. The Inter-Ministerial Conference on Migration, Environment, and Climate Change on this 29th July 2022, Congress Speaker Resort Munyonyo, Kampala, Republic of Uganda. We, the Ministers of Environment, Ministers of Interior, and Ministers of Foreign Affairs of the governments of the member states of the Intergovernmental Authority on Development, IGAD, and the East African Community, EAC, and the states of the East and Horn of Africa, having gathered together with high-level representatives on the African Union, UN, and development partners, and the youth at the Inter-Ministerial Conference on Migration, Environment, and Climate Change on 27th to 29th July 2022 in Kampala, Republic of Uganda. In the spirit of regional and integration and friendship that ties the countries of East Africa and the Horn of Africa region, namely Republic of Burundi, Republic of Djibouti, the Democratic Republic of Congo, and the states of Eritrea, Federal Democratic Republic of Ethiopia, Republic of Kenya, Republic of Rwanda, Federal Republic of Somalia, Republic of South Sudan, Republic of Sudan, United Republic of Tanzania, and the Republic of Uganda. Deeply concerned by the adverse effects of the climate change crisis on our people and livestock, place an urgent call for enhanced cooperation and action to address the following. A, the progressive desertification and land degradation create the forced mobility of people and livestock. B, the unsustainable use of ecosystems and the impact of frequent and intense extreme weather events on people and livestock. C, the unplanned migration of our people from rural to urban centers as a result of climate change and disasters. D, the paucity of data and statistics on the impact of climate change on human and livestock mobility in the region. And E, the limitations of partnership and financing to respond to the climate crisis adversely affecting the mobility of our people and livestock in the region. Recognizing that East and Horn of Africa region is severely affected by environmental degradation, floods, landslides, sandstorms, tropical cyclones, drought, water levels rise, and rainfall variability. Notably, in 2001 alone, 2.6 million new disaster displacements occurred in sub-Saharan Africa, creating climate mobility crisis. Determined to strengthen economic growth, sustain social cohesion and sustainability in our region. Desirous of declaring our commitment to timely respond to critical matters of migration, environment, and climate change and its adverse impact on people and livestock through enhancing cooperation on the climate change mobility crisis. Note with concern that groups including women, girls, youth, the elderly, persons with disabilities, migrants, displaced persons, pastoralists, and minorities might be threatened with marginalization in exercising their rights to access climate action opportunities. Guided by the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, 1948, the International Covenant on Economic, Social, and Cultural Rights, 1966, the United Nations Council Resolution 3520, the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change, and the Paris Agreement of 2015, the United Nations Convention on Combat Desertification, 1994, the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development, the Sendai Framework for Disaster Risk Reduction, 2015 to 2030, the Agenda for the Protection of Cross-Border Displaced Persons in the Context of Disaster and Climate Change, 2015, the New Urban Agenda, 2017, Article 28. The Conventions on Biological Diversity, 1992. The Global Compact for Safe, Orderly, and Regular Migration, 2018. The Global Compact on Refugees, 2013. The UN ILO, International Labour Standards, the African Union Agenda, 2063, and the Glasgow Climate Pact, 2021. Recalling previous decisions of the Conference of Parties of the United Nations Framework Conventions on Climate Change, on long-term cooperation action to ensure understanding, coordination, and cooperation in regard to climate change-induced displacement, migration, and planned relocation, where appropriate at the national, regional, and international levels. Recalling that the Paris Agreement acknowledges that climate change is a common concern of mankind, that adaptation is a global challenge faced at local, sub-national, national, regional, and global dimensions, and contributes to the protections of people, livelihood, and ecosystems, taking into account the urgent and immediate needs of those small island states and developing country party that are particularly vulnerable to the adverse effect of climate change. And the Paris Agreement, FCCC, CP 2015, L9 Decision 50, requesting the Executive Committee of the Warsaw International Mechanisms to establish, according to its procedures and mandate, a task force to complement, draw upon the work, and involve an appropriate existing bodies and experts group under the convention, including the Adaptation Committee and the Least Developed Countries Experts Group, as well as relevant organizations and experts bodies outside the conventions, to the FCCC CP 2015 L9 Rev 18 development recommendations for integrated approaches to avert, minimize, and address displays related to the adverse impact of climate change. Noting the Glasgow Sharm el-Sheikh work program on the global goal of adaptation with a view to enhance adaptation actions and support in line with Cancun Climate Change Adaptation Framework and the Decision 1 CMA 3 Glasgow Climate Pact of 2021, acknowledging the rights of migrants when taking action to address climate change. Aware of the progressive work of the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, in line with the Working Group 2 Report on Climate Change 2022, Impacts, Adaptation, and Vulnerability. Recalling the mandates that emerge from the 26th UN Climate Change Conference, that is COP26 in Glasgow, in 2021, to inform the preparations for the 27th UN Climate Change Conference, that is COP27 in Sharm el-Sheikh in November 2022, towards robust climate actions, deeper cuts in greenhouse gas emissions, enhanced resilience to adapt to the effects of climate change, and financial support for developing countries, including preparations for the first global stocktake at the 28th UN Climate Change Conference, that's COP28, at the end of 2023. Recognizing and appreciating the leadership of the government of the Republic of Uganda in this dialogue on climate change, environment, and migration. Further recognizing and appreciating the partnership between IOM and the UNFCCC with member states, the AU, EAC, and IGAD in facilitating this important dialogue on the migration, environment, and climate change. In this context, therefore, we, the Minister of the Environment, Minister of the Interior, and Minister of Foreign Affairs of the EAC, IGAD, states of the East and Horn of Africa, having gathered key messages of experiences from government experts, the youth, community leaders, as well as development partners, in the spirit of international cooperation and regional integration, hereby commit to: 1. Build and strengthen climate resilience and adaptive interventions of all communities living in fragile ecosystems, flood-prone water basins, low-lying areas, and mountain slopes, including enhancing urgent regional and national legislation, policies, and strategies for action. 2. Implement and domesticate the provisions of the United Nations Convention to combat desertification. Underscore states' role to address desertification, land degradation, and drought as one of the drivers of poverty and forced mobility. 3. Facilitate a conducive regulatory and policy to enhance the socio-economic benefit of remittance, trade, and investment. 4. Engage multilateral development banks and financial institutions and development partners to create or extend financial relief to countries hosting migrants and disaster-displaced persons. Create and/or increase investments in the circular economy, renewable energy and energy efficiency, climate and smart agriculture, green economy, blue economy, digital economy, and nature-based solutions. 6. Develop comprehensive urban plans to address population surge in urban arising as a result of adverse impact of climate change in marginal rural areas, including promoting rural-urban collaboration to reduce vulnerability and create adaptive mechanisms for safe migrations and access to sustainable livelihood. 7. Work with the private sector to improve urban-rural connectivity for the youth and traders through internet access, technological advancements, provision of energy, and road or railway infrastructure. 8. Establish and strengthen regional and national weather and climate institutions and systems to generate accurate, timely data and information on climate change impacts on human mobility and increase collaboration amongst member states and with the IGAD Center of Excellence for Climate Prediction and Applications. 9. Address knowledgeable gaps by understanding and applying indigenous knowledge and practice to the development of appropriate adaptation responses to reduce the context or specific vulnerability of communities to the impact of climate change. 10. Apply and integrate gender and human rights-based approaches in the design and implementation of policies relating to climate change and migration nexus. 11. Establish an IGAD, EAC, and states of East and Horn of Africa Inter-Ministerial Working Group on Climate Change, Environment and Migration, develop a plan of action for the implementation of this declaration and monitor and report regularly on progress and implementation by member states. 12. Requests the African Ministerial Conference on the Environment, AMSEN, the African Group of Negotiations, AGN, and the Group of 77 and China, and the LDC Group of Negotiators to take forward the work of IGAD EAC, and states of the East and Horn of Africa, Inter-Ministerial Working Group on Climate Change, Environment, Migration, and request to launch this Kampala Ministerial Declaration at COP27 with intentions to continue the work up to COP28 and beyond. 13, we further request the parties to A, take action to avert, minimize, and address displacements in the context of climate change and disaster, both across and within borders. B, strengthen support to countries and communities most vulnerable to climate change impacts to access new and additional scale-up climate finance. C, strengthen cooperation at all levels of government and communities and implement treaties, pacts, protocols, and regulations on free movement of people, labor, mobility, and transhumance. Facilitate capacity building and technology transfer for climate action and human mobility. E, create a multi-partner financing institution, including for youth, to avert, minimize, and address loss and damage, and advance the global goal of adaptation in the East and Horn of Africa. We remain committed to address the climate change crisis and its effect on our people, livestock in the East and Horn of Africa. Done, finally, done at Kampala, this 29th day of July 2022, in two originals in English and French, both texts being equally authentic, to be signed by all those who are here. I thank you very much. God bless you all.
Your Excellencies will now transition to the second session that includes the signing of the declaration. And I want to invite crane performers in exactly 2 minutes to entertain us as we bring the tables in front and set up for that signing ceremony. Thank you very much.
What
Ladies and gentlemen, surely a round of applause for Crane performers. May I take the pleasure of inviting the Honorable Minister, the Honorable Sam Chaptoris, to come and invite our heads of delegation to take to the front for the declaration signing.
Thank you very much, Moderator. Your Excellencies, it is now my privilege to invite the head of delegations to move to that table in front there so that we can sign the declaration. Because of constraints of time, I would like to propose that we only sign one copy in the front of the heads of state, and then after the heads of state have delivered their speeches and have gone, we shall complete the exercise. So please, heads of delegations, can we move to those tables, to those two tables, and we sign the declaration. Is there a problem? The countries which will be signing will be the Republic of Burundi, of Djibouti, Democratic Republic of Congo, the State of Eritrea, the Federal Democratic Republic of Ethiopia, the Republic of Kenya, the Republic of Rwanda, the Federal Republic of Somalia, the Republic of the Sudan, the United Republic of Tanzania, the Republic of Uganda, the People's Republic of Algeria, the Republic of Egypt, the Republic of Senegal, and the Republic of Zambia. Thank you. Hey, sorry. It appears I forgot the Republic of South Sudan. I'm extremely sorry. Yet it is the biggest delegation here. And please accept my apologies.
Your Excellencies, if you've noticed, there is 17 representatives in front of you. Those include the partners invited to witness this signing of the declaration, the Republic of Senegal, who are the presidency of the African Union, the Arab Republic of Egypt, the presidency of COP27, the People's Democratic Republic of Algeria, who are guests to this Inter-Ministerial Conference, and the Republic of Zambia, who are chair of the African Group of Negotiators. Ladies and gentlemen, a round of applause.
Great performance. Your Excellency, may I request delegates to each hold one folder for members of the press. We will all hold one folder and have it to show in front of the press and, of course, in front of the principals who are here today to show your commitment to this declaration. So, Lucy, if we could have each of the delegates have a folder. All right, so just one more. Part of the table is packed. All right, so with your indulgence, our delegates will request that we will find a way. The press is on either side. So my suggestion, let's move to the front of the table. Lucy, if we could have our delegates move to the front of the table because the table becomes a distraction. And members of the press, this is your moment. I only have a minute before I invite the minister who will invite their excellencies to speak to us. So delegates, members of the press, find the perfect position because we must pronounce the great news of the Kampala Declaration, the Kampala Ministerial Declaration on Migration, Environment and Climate Change, signed here in Kampala on this 29th day of July, 2022. So ladies and gentlemen, mine is request you now to put your hands together for our commitment to this Kampala Declaration. Thank you very much, Your Excellencies, the Honorable Ministers, and Your Excellencies, the ambassadors here. We thank you so much. Thank you very much, heads of delegation. Thank you so much. I now will take the pleasure of inviting the Honorable Minister, Sam Chaptoris, to invite the Excellencies to speak to us. You're welcome, Honorable.
I want to thank the ministers for signing the declaration. Your Excellencies, it is now time for our principals to address us. And I want to take this opportunity to invite His Excellency the President to chair the next session. Thank you very much.
His Excellency President Salva Kiir Mayardit, President of the Republic of South Sudan, the honorable ministers, and all the other delegates. It is now my honor. I want to congratulate you on signing the declaration. And it's now my honor to invite His Excellency General Salva Kiir to address you. Thank you very much.
Your Excellency, President Yoweri Kaguta Museveni, President of the Republic of Uganda. Honorable ministers and delegations that have come to this conference. Distinguished senior officials of the pre-COP27 Secretariat, representatives of the East African Community, EAC, the Intergovernmental Authority and Development, IGAD, and Horn of Africa. Distinguished delegates, ladies and gentlemen, allow me to convey my heartfelt gratitude and appreciation to His Excellency and brother, President Yoweri Kaguta Museveni, for the warm reception and generosity he accorded to us, the attendees of this summit. This conference came at a critical time for our region. It came at a time when we are facing varied climate-induced disasters, such as floods, droughts, and landslides. These disasters affect our respective countries differently. Despite their different forms, recent studies have shown that we need to do one thing: adapt. And adaptation means devoting resources to building resilient communities. Your Excellencies, South Sudan has submitted its nationally determined contribution along with its first national adaptation plan to the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change. What is contained in these climate action documents can only be realized with the help of climate finance from the developed countries. This call for the developed world to provide resources for the climate adaptation was reaffirmed in the Paris Agreement. It is also justified by the principle of common but differentiated responsibility and respective capabilities in the same agreement. Despite the urgency of climate change, we are yet to receive 100 billion United States dollars pledged by the developed world to the developing world in 2020. While this amount is below the target, we have not received it, and we only hear that 2023 is the time it will be raised. By then, it may be too late. I have a young daughter who spoke here before, representing women and the youth. I want to assure her that South Sudan has given 35% to women in the current government. The woman is the Speaker of our National Assembly for the first time. And a woman is the Minister of Defense. So other ministers like whom you have seen here, the Minister of Environment, which we are talking about, is also a woman. As countries which have contributed less to the emission of carbon dioxide to the atmosphere, and the ones bearing the brunt of climate-induced disasters, we need to unite and call upon the developed world to meet its commitment to fund climate adaptation immediately. We cannot cope with the climate-induced disasters indefinitely. Big polluters in the world must live up to their commitments and avail the resources. Currently, over 60% of our people in South Sudan are categorized as food insecure and in need of life-saving intervention. From the climate-induced displacement, mainly flooding, the Republic of South Sudan has been struggling with record floods for the last 2 years. The floods have already destroyed many communities in the low-lying areas. In 6 out of the 10 states. In these areas, people's lives have been altered by internal displacement of over 1 million persons, along with destruction of livestock, wildlife, and crops. These floods induce losses, if not tackled urgently, can lead to increased irregular migration that can affect countries beyond our borders. Another issue of concern to us is deforestation. This is really critical because 99.9% of our population depends on forests as the sole source of energy. To us, a quick transition to clean and renewable energy will alleviate the resources on our forests. In our plan to save our forests, we target to generate 3,000 megawatts of power from hydro, solar, wind, geothermal, and natural gas. Achieving this goal requires financial support, capacity building, and technology transfer. All of which depend on climate finance. To effectively address climate change threat to our region and the world at large, South Sudan would like to, one, underscore the importance of adaptation. Our region needs a balance between mitigation and adaptation, where 50% of the climate funds be earmarked for adaptation projects. Two, stress that the $100 billion that was arbitrarily said is no longer sufficient. This amount needs to be raised upwards. Seven. Three, appeal to all parties that have not submitted their national determined contributions to do so urgently to allow us to keep the 1.5 degrees goal alive. In closing, I would like to affirm South Sudan's commitment to Kampala Declaration of the ministers responsible for environment, migration, and foreign affairs of the government of the member states of IGAD and the East African Community. We will stand by what is agreed in this declaration on its entirety. Let us all go to Sharm el-Sheikh in November, speaking with one voice of this declaration. We have no other choice than to adapt to the changing climate. With faith in humanity, I have that the developed world will live to its commitment and avail the needed resources for this important task. Thank you very much.
Climate change is contributing to humanitarian crisis. Climate-related hazards such as floods, as you had His Excellency Salva Kiir telling you, South Sudan is a country which is flat in many areas, and you hear what he was telling you. Droughts, like what is going on now in some parts of the Horn of Africa, even parts of Uganda. Landslides impact the already vulnerable communities, increasingly driving displacement, insecurity, conflicts, and involuntary migration of people in all regions of the world. According to the United Nations High Commissioner for Refugees, an annual average of 21.5 million people has been forcefully displaced by weather-related events such as floods, storms, wildfires, and extreme temperatures. These extreme temperatures recently have been cooking the Europeans. The Europeans have also been cooked now this time. London, the temperature has got 41 degrees centigrade. The different parts of the United States, Spain, all those places, people have been suffering with a lot of wildfires and so on. As we are all aware, East Africa, here in Uganda, we have never had 41 degrees. Not even 35. Here in Kampala, we have never had those temperatures. Karamoja may be 35. But 41 degrees centigrade, we could see people fainting in Europe and the United States. So people who don't listen, they cause a lot of problems for everybody, including themselves. As we are all aware, East Africa and the Intergovernmental Authority on Development, IGAD, and many African countries rely heavily on natural resources. The changing climate and weather conditions are putting our economies, our communities, agriculture, health, water supply, hydropower production, road infrastructure, and housing at more risk and making us more vulnerable. We cannot afford to take no action. In collaboration with our highly esteemed partners, such as the National Determined Contribution Partnerships, most of our countries have updated their national climate action plans, also known as National Determined Contributions, NDCs. As African countries, we reaffirm our commitment to the realization of the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development and the Africa Agenda 2063. Generally, for African countries, climate change adaptation is key in addressing the impacts of climate change at all levels, including addressing loss and damage, and increasing the resilience of communities, infrastructure, and ecosystems. This is consistent with the African Union Climate Change and Resilient Development Strategy and Action Plan 2022-2032 that aims at building the resilience of African communities, ecosystems, and economies, and supporting the regional adaptation. No country can address the challenge of climate change alone. We must work together to increase adaptive capacities while minimizing the negative impacts of climate-related displacements and involuntary migration. I appeal to you to take advantage of this opportunity to further discussions on climate change and human mobility, to inform the upcoming 27th United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change Conference of the Parties, COP27, that is scheduled to take place in Egypt later this year. The commitment we have made today is our first landmark, strengthening our cooperation in relation to climate change-induced human mobility, including migration, displacement, and planned relocation. The outcome of this conference is to bring the issue of migration, environment, and climate change to the mainstream national and international forums, especially in the climate change negotiations during the 27th United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change Conference of the Parties, COP27. Here in Uganda, we can give testimony to the dangers of mismanaging the environment. There is the global mismanagement of the environment by those who are emitting greenhouse gases, such as carbon dioxide, which is a very good gas, because carbon dioxide is a good gas if it is used properly. You remember, carbon dioxide is captured by plants, and the plants use it to manufacture food for us. So the issue is not just carbon dioxide, it is the misuse, the greed. Greed is the biggest problem. Greed of people who are looking for money in a quick way. Otherwise, carbon dioxide is used by plants, as you know, through photosynthesis to manufacture food. All life has got carbon in it. But those people who are greedy for money have caused this problem of increasing those greenhouse gases in the atmosphere. So these are the ones we are telling you must stop. And we should insist on that, so that the globe does not become warmer than it should be. And that means also planting trees, more trees, because trees can capture back that carbon dioxide and imprison it. All those trees contain carbon dioxide, and they are constantly capturing it from the atmosphere to make actually good things for us. But then, even ourselves, we should also, here in Uganda, I don't know about the other countries, even ourselves are contributing. For instance, destroying the wetlands is our responsibility. It is not the Europeans who are destroying the wetlands, it is us. The Chinese, when we got in touch with them, introduced a culture which our people here didn't know, the culture of growing rice in swamps. I don't know what swamps they use in Asia, but here, what they call swamps are actually tributaries of the River Nile. So when you grow rice in the swamp, you are committing a very big crime. And this is us, it's not the Europeans. This must stop. Now, I don't know how the scientists briefed you, but here in Uganda, 60% of the rainfall is from the oceans, from the Pacific Ocean, from the Indian Ocean, and sometimes from the Atlantic also. But 40% of the rain is from our wetlands here. And the ones in South Sudan, and the forest in Congo. Therefore, by interfering with the forest, interfering with the wetlands, we ourselves are destroying 40% of the rainfall of this area. So the countries of the Great Lakes, you really need all to watch. In Uganda here, I'm having war to make sure that nobody cultivates in the wetland. You cannot be cleverer than God. God is the one who said this is a wetland, this is the lake. You can imagine people go to cultivate in Lake Victoria as if they are mad. This is water. God is the one who said this is water. This is in the book of Genesis. You go and read the book of Genesis, even if you are not Christians. From the beginning, God said He created the water, and then He said, let water separate from the land. And some parts were water, some parts were land. Now somebody comes and says, God was wrong. What he made water, I will make a garden of rice and mayuni and all that takataka. This is terrible. So, and these scientists, I don't know whether they have briefed you, the Ugandan scientists, they were able to show me that 40% of the rain Uganda get, some parts of Uganda get, is from local water bodies. And they showed me that here where we are, near the Entebbe airport, is where the equator passes. Where you landed at the airport, that's where the equator passes. So you going north. By the time you get to places like West Nile, you are at degree 3 north of the equator. Now, the northeastern part of Uganda, Karamoja, is also north, 3 degrees, 4 degrees north of the equator. But they get 35 inches of rain when the rain is good in Karamoja. In the northwest, Acholi, some parts of Acholi and West Nile, they get almost 2 times. They get 60 inches of rain. Why? Because of the swamps in South Sudan and the forest in Congo. They are the same latitude, Karamoja and West Nile, but the other one gets almost 2 times the rain of the other one because of the local water of the nearby water bodies and forests. So, if this science is known to people, how can we kill ourselves, commit suicide by attacking the wetlands? The wetlands must be vacated. The river banks. I want to congratulate our Tanzanian brothers. I was recently in Arusha for our meeting there. They have done a good job in Arusha town. those streams there, they are all protected with plants, they are forests in Arusha town. Although the other area is dry, but near Mount Meru, you see very good protection of the forests, so that the river banks are protected with vegetation, so that the runoff water doesn't sweep soil into the river and all of that, like in the lake here, cutting the vegetation near the lake shore. Very, very irresponsible. So while we in Uganda are quarreling with the Europeans for the greenhouse gases, but we must solve our own problem, which we can solve ourselves, which is interfering with the rain cycle of our wetlands and water bodies, which contribute to our rain, our own rain, not the rain of anybody else. As I conclude, I would like to thank you once again for putting aside your valuable time and for the commitment that has contributed to a successful outcome of this conference. That declaration is very good. I wish you all a pleasant stay in Uganda. Did they say I was closing or opening? Oh, but I'm saying you should stay here. Although I'm closed, you stay around and enjoy yourselves. I thank you all and I wish you good luck. Thank you very much.
Your Excellency, there is just one request. After the anthems, we'll have some photos taken, and I will guide when that happens. I would like now to take the pleasure of requesting that we all be upstanding for the anthems. Thank you very much, Police Brass Band. Your Excellency, as we organize the parties, protocol, please organize the parties for the photos. We are requesting, Your Excellencies, the ministers and the heads of delegation. That's the first photo. Protocol, you could guide them to where the photo is going to happen. And then the next photo will be the UN agencies, our development partners that are here present, who will be then taking a photo with the Excellency, the President. So may I request protocol to manage our first set of photos, which is the ministers and heads of delegation only, please. Of course, this will include the UN IOM, which is the UN migration as hosts. Then the next set, and this is also to request the UN agencies led here by the UN resident coordinator and the other heads of the UN agencies. That will be the second photo that will include members of IGAD and also the IOM. That's the second set. So the first set of pictures, the presidents will take a photo with the ministers, permanent secretaries present here, and the heads of delegation only. Protocol, please manage, and then we'll bring the heads of state. The rest of us can remain seated. Again, please note, coffee will be served immediately after this, and then I'll let you know where lunch is going to be served. Thank you very much. So the first photo will be with the ministers, the heads of delegation, and the permanent secretaries. Please note that the ministers represent the 12 member countries of the states of East and the Horn of Africa, and also our visiting delegations, the delegation from Egypt, Senegal, Algeria, and Zambia. So that is the first photo, and shortly I will introduce the second photo. So all right, so that's the only photo. That's the only photo, ladies and gentlemen. We want to thank Your Excellencies for joining us this morning and early afternoon. Your Excellency President Yoweri Kaguta Museveni, Your Excellency President Salva Kiir Mayardit. We want to thank you so much for being part of this very historic moment. The high-level Inter-Ministerial meeting or conference on migration, environment, and climate change. No, they're finished. We want to thank our partners, the member states present here, the UN family, and of course, the Ministry of Water and Environment that has put this together. It's been an exciting 3-day conference that concludes this afternoon with the declaration, the Kampala Ministerial Declaration of member states of the Intergovernmental Authority on Development, the East African Community, and the states of East and the Horn of Africa. Ladies and gentlemen, coffee is up. I have some feedback, guys. So ladies and gentlemen, coffee is served. However, I need to let you know our VIPs, that is the heads of the delegation, the UN family, and also the ministers present here. Lunch is served in the tent next door. So the tent next door. Please make your way to the tent. You want to sign the other page? All right. So the honorable minister, does mention that the heads of delegation, please.